"Let's make a deal," he said, leaning against the wooden fence with one hand resting on his chin. "Your daughter will work on my property for 1 year, as my exclusive housekeeper. In return, your debt disappears." The silence that followed seemed to swallow all the air from the backyard. You're probably thinking, what kind of man says something like that? Maybe you've already condemned me, imagining me as a ruthless villain. But before you pass your verdict, listen to every detail of this story. Because believe me, nothing is as simple as it seems, and not as cruel as it appears. It all started when Charlotte Reed was in the backyard of her home in a small Tennessee town, picking tomatoes for dinner. The late afternoon sun painted the sky orange when she heard the sound of an expensive car stopping on the gravel driveway. From the kitchen window, her mother shouted, "Charlotte, there's a man here wanting to speak with your father." The young woman's heart raced. In recent months, men in suits constantly appeared at their house, always with the same serious expression, always talking about money her father owed. But this one was different. Through the wooden fence, she could only see a gleaming black Bentley and the silhouette of a tall man wearing a suit that probably cost more than her family earned in a year. Charlotte's fingers trembled as she gripped the wicker basket filled with ripe tomatoes. The familiar weight that once brought her comfort now felt heavy, almost burdensome. Her chest tightened with an inexplicable anxiety that made her breath come in shallow gasps. Why did this stranger's presence affect her so differently from all the others? "Dad's not home," she whispered to herself, knowing her father had left to look for work once again. But as she turned, there he was, Thomas Reed, with shoulders curved under the weight of worries, walking slowly toward the gate. Charlotte dropped the tomato basket and ran to the porch, hiding behind the wooden column. Her palms were sweaty, and she could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. Something about this moment felt different, pivotal, as if her entire life was about to shift on its axis. The stranger introduced himself as Logan Blackwell. The name echoed in Charlotte's mind like a warning bell. She had heard the town women whisper about him at the market. The Wall Street executioner, destroys companies before breakfast, never married because no woman can handle such coldness. But seeing him now, Charlotte felt a strange flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with fear. He was devastatingly handsome in a way that both frightened and attracted her. His presence commanded attention without effort, like a force of nature you couldn't ignore even if you wanted to. "Mr. Reed," Logan's voice was deep, controlled, with an accent that betrayed expensive education. "I believe we both know why I'm here." Thomas cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Blackwell, I need more time. Just a few more months and $67,000, Logan interrupted. "With interest, $83,000. I have no more time for games, Thomas." Charlotte felt her stomach churn. $83,000. It was more money than she could imagine. How had her father managed to owe so much? Her mind raced with possibilities, each more frightening than the last. Would they lose the house? The small farm that had been in her family for 3 generations? Where would they go? What would happen to her dreams of maybe one day going to college, of seeing something beyond the rolling hills of Tennessee? "Please." Her father's voice was breaking. "I'll lose everything. The house, the farm. It's all I have to leave for my daughter." That's when Logan paused. His eyes, an icy blue, swept across the modest property until they found Charlotte half hidden on the porch. For a moment that seemed eternal, they stared at each other. Charlotte felt as if the world had stopped spinning. Those eyes seemed to see right through her, past her simple sundress and bare feet, past her inexperience and small-town innocence. She felt exposed, yet strangely thrilled, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you shouldn't look down but unable to resist. Heat crept up her neck and spread across her cheeks. She had never been looked at like that before, not with crude interest like the boys from town, but with an intensity that made her feel both vulnerable and powerful at the same time. "Your daughter," Logan repeated slowly, never taking his eyes off Charlotte. "What's her age?" 19, Thomas answered hesitantly. "But I don't see how that—" "She's beautiful," Logan stated matter-of-factly, as if commenting on the weather. Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. "And clearly intelligent, judging by how carefully she's been listening to our conversation." Charlotte felt her face burn with embarrassment at being caught eavesdropping, but also with something else, a strange pride that this powerful, sophisticated man had noticed her, had called her beautiful. "Let's make a deal," The words came from Logan's mouth, as if they were the most natural thing in the world. Your daughter works at my estate for 1 year as my exclusive housekeeper, and your debt is paid in full. The silence that followed was deafening. Charlotte felt her legs wobble. Working for him, in his house? The thought terrified and excited her in equal measure. You're insane, Thomas exploded. She's just a child. She's of legal age, Logan replied coolly. And I'm not asking for anything inappropriate, Thomas. It's a business arrangement. 1 year of honest work, managing my household, overseeing my staff, ensuring my home runs smoothly. She'll have her own quarters, full respect, and generous compensation. Charlotte swallowed hard. Her rational mind screamed that this was absurd, that it was madness. But there was something in his posture, in the way he spoke, that didn't seem desperate. It seemed calculated, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. More than that, there was something in his tone when he spoke about her that made her pulse quicken. Not the leering interest of the local boys, but something deeper, more complex. Respect, maybe? Or was she just imagining things because she wanted so desperately to believe this could be something more than just another humiliation for her family? What exactly would she be doing? Thomas asked, his voice tight with suspicion and protective concern. Running my household, Logan explained patiently. I have a large estate that requires proper management. She would oversee the cleaning staff, coordinate with my chef for meals and events, manage my schedule for home appointments. Think of it as an intensive apprenticeship in business management. Charlotte's heart leapt. Business management. The idea thrilled her more than she wanted to admit. She had always been the one to balance her family's meager budget, to organize their small household, to handle the correspondence with creditors. Could this be her chance to learn something valuable? To become someone more than just a small-town girl with limited prospects? And if she refuses? Thomas asked. Logan finally shifted his gaze from Charlotte to face him. Then we see each other in court next week, and you lose everything anyway. Thomas looked at his daughter, his eyes filled with tears of despair. Charlotte felt the weight of the decision on her shoulders. She could save her family, but at what cost? Her hands shook as she gripped the porch railing. This was it. The moment her life would change forever, one way or another. She thought of her mother inside, probably listening at the window, trying to stay strong. She thought of her father's sleepless nights, the way he'd aged 10 years in the past few months. She thought of herself, 19 years old, with dreams bigger than this small town but no way to reach them. She began, descending the porch steps with trembling legs. Each step felt monumental, as if she were walking toward her destiny. I need to think about it. Logan nodded, pulling an elegant card from his suit jacket's inner pocket. You have until tomorrow at noon, Miss Reed. My number is there. As he handed her the card, their fingers brushed for just a moment. Charlotte felt an electric shock run through her arm, and she saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise. Interest. She couldn't be sure, but it made her stomach flip in a way that was both terrifying and wonderful. For the record, he said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. I'm not a monster, but I am a businessman, and this is the best deal your family is going to get. He walked to his car, but before getting in, he looked over his shoulder. Miss Reed, you're stronger than you know. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise. The Bentley disappeared down the dusty road, leaving behind only the scent of fine leather and expensive cologne. Charlotte looked at the card in her hands. Logan Blackwell, CEO, Blackwell Enterprises. That night, lying in her simple bed, Charlotte couldn't sleep. Her mind oscillated between reason, which screamed for her to run from this man and his insane proposal, and something more dangerous, a burning curiosity about what it would be like to be near someone so powerful, so intense. She imagined walking through the halls of a grand mansion, making decisions that mattered, learning about business and the world beyond Tennessee's rolling hills. She imagined the clothes she might wear, the confidence she might gain, the person she might become. But she also thought about Logan's eyes, the way they had seen her, really seen her, in a way no one ever had before, the way her skin had tingled when he'd called her beautiful, the way her breath had caught when their fingers touched. Was he really the monster everyone said he was? Or was there something more behind those penetrating blue eyes? One thing was certain. Her peaceful life in Tennessee was about to change forever. Charlotte barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Logan's piercing blue gaze and felt that strange electric sensation when their fingers had touched. The business card lay on her nightstand, catching moonlight like a small beacon of possibility or doom. At dawn, she found her mother, Susan, in the kitchen making coffee with shaking hands. The older woman's eyes were red-rimmed, and Charlotte knew she hadn't slept either. "Mum?" Charlotte's voice came out as a whisper. Susan turned, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, honey, I was hoping you'd sleep in today. We need to talk about Mr. Blackwell's offer." Her mother's composure cracked. "That man has some nerve. Asking my baby girl to—" She couldn't finish the sentence, collapsing into a kitchen chair. Charlotte sat beside her, taking her mother's weathered hands in hers. "It's just housekeeping, Mom. 1 year, and it would save everything." "You don't understand, Charlotte." Susan's voice trembled. "Men like that, they don't make offers without expecting something in return. Something more than just housework." But Charlotte had seen something in Logan's eyes yesterday. Not predatory hunger, but something more complex. Respect, maybe? Professional interest? She couldn't explain it, but her instincts told her he meant exactly what he'd said. "What if he's different?" Charlotte asked softly. "And what if he's not?" Susan shot back. "What if you go there and he takes advantage? You're 19, Charlotte. You've never even been kissed properly." Heat flooded Charlotte's cheeks at the reminder of her inexperience. But instead of shame, she felt a strange thrill. Maybe that was exactly why she needed this, to discover who she could become outside the confines of their small town. The screen door creaked, and Thomas entered, looking like he'd aged another decade overnight. "Any decisions?" he asked quietly, not meeting either woman's eyes. "Dad." Charlotte stood, her heart pounding. "Tell me the truth. If I don't take this offer, what happens?" Thomas sank heavily into his chair. "We lose the house by the end of the month. I've already spoken to my brother in Kentucky. He can take your mother in, but not me," Charlotte finished. She'd always known Uncle Jim disapproved of her big city dreams and modern ideas about women working. "I'll figure something out for you, sweetheart. Maybe the diner in town needs—" "A waitress making minimum wage won't save us," Charlotte interrupted gently. "And we all know it." She walked to the window, looking out at the land her great-grandfather had settled. Rolling green hills stretched toward the horizon, peaceful and beautiful, but suddenly feeling more like a prison than a home. "What do you know about Logan Blackwell?" she asked suddenly. Thomas frowned. "He's ruthless in business, that's certain. Built his empire from nothing after his parents died when he was 25. Never married, though he's been engaged twice. Both times the women broke it off, saying he was too cold, too focused on work. But has he ever—" Charlotte struggled with the words. "Hurt anyone? Any women?" "Not that I've heard," Thomas admitted reluctantly. "His reputation is about being calculating and demanding, not being inappropriate with women." Susan made a distressed sound. "Thomas, you can't seriously be considering this. What choice do we have?" Thomas's voice cracked. "I failed them, Susan. I failed my wife and my daughter. At least this way, Charlotte gets a year to learn, to earn money, to figure out her future. And maybe," he looked at his daughter with desperate hope, "maybe she'll impress him enough that he'll help her get into business school or find a good job somewhere." Charlotte felt her heart skip. Business school. She'd dreamed of it for years but never dared hope it was possible. Could this bizarre arrangement actually be her ticket to the life she'd always wanted? "I need to call him," she said suddenly. Both parents stared at her. "Charlotte," Susan began. "I'm going to do it." The words came out stronger than she felt. "But I want to talk to him first. Ask questions. Set boundaries." With trembling fingers, she dialed the number on the card. It rang twice before that familiar deep voice answered. "Logan Blackwell." "Mr. Blackwell? This is Charlotte Reed." A pause. "Miss Reed, I wasn't expecting to hear from you quite so early. I have questions," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Of course. Fire away. What exactly would my duties include?" "Managing my household staff, coordinating my home calendar, overseeing meal planning for business dinners, ensuring my home office runs smoothly when I work from the estate. Think of it as executive assistant meets house manager. And my living arrangements? You'd have the entire east wing, bedroom, private bathroom, sitting room, completely separate from the main house, with your own entrance if desired. Charlotte felt some of her anxiety ease. Work hours? Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 generally. Some evenings when I entertain, but you'd be compensated extra for those. Weekends mostly free unless there's a special event. And after the year? Another pause. A glowing letter of recommendation, a bonus substantial enough to pay for college if you choose, and my personal assistance in finding your next position. I have connections in many industries. Charlotte's heart raced. College. A real career. Independence. Mr. Blackwell, she said slowly. Why me? You could hire any experienced housekeeper. The silence stretched so long she wondered if he'd hung up. Finally, because you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who deserved better than the hand life dealt her. Something in his voice made Charlotte's chest tighten. A note of old pain, carefully controlled, but unmistakable. When would I start? She heard herself ask. This weekend. I'll send a car for you Saturday morning. Charlotte looked at her parents, both watching her with mixtures of fear and hope. I accept your offer, Mr. Blackwell. Logan, he corrected. If we're going to work together, formality seems unnecessary. I'll see you Saturday, Charlotte. The line went dead, and Charlotte stared at the phone, hardly believing what she'd just done. Well, Susan whispered. I'm going to work for Logan Blackwell, Charlotte said, and despite her terror, she felt a thrill of anticipation. And I think this might be the best decision I've ever made. Outside, storm clouds were gathering, but for the first time in months, Charlotte felt like the sun was finally beginning to shine on her future. Saturday morning arrived with crisp autumn air and the purr of an expensive engine. Charlotte stood at her bedroom window, watching a sleek black Mercedes pull into their driveway. Her single suitcase sat by the door. Everything she owned fit into one modest piece of luggage, a fact that made her both embarrassed and oddly liberated. Miss Reed? The driver was an older gentleman with kind eyes and a warm smile. I'm Henry. Mr. Blackwell sent me to collect you. Just Charlotte, please, she said, grateful for his friendly demeanor as he took her suitcase. The drive to Logan's estate took 40 minutes through winding country roads that gradually gave way to manicured landscapes. Charlotte pressed her face to the window as they passed stone pillars marking the entrance to Blackwell Manor. The driveway alone was longer than her street back home. When the house came into view, Charlotte's breath caught. It wasn't just a mansion. It was a masterpiece of architecture. All clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that seemed to invite the outdoors in. Modern yet timeless, imposing yet somehow welcoming. First time seeing the house? Henry asked, noticing her amazement. It's incredible, Charlotte whispered. Does he live here alone? Mostly. He has staff during the day, but evenings and weekends it's usually just him rattling around in all that space. Henry's tone suggested he found this somewhat sad. Been hoping he'd find someone to share it with. Before Charlotte could ask what he meant, the front door opened and Logan appeared. Even in casual Saturday clothes, dark jeans and a white button-down, he commanded attention. Charlotte felt that familiar flutter in her stomach as he approached the car. Charlotte, he said, opening her door himself. Welcome to Blackwell Manor. Up close, she noticed details she'd missed during their first meeting. Laugh lines around his eyes suggested he wasn't always the serious businessman. A small scar on his left hand hinted at a more adventurous past. And when he smiled, really smiled, it transformed his entire face. It's beautiful, she managed, accepting his offered hand to step out of the car. Again, that electric sensation at his touch. Let me show you around, Logan said, his hand settling lightly on her lower back as he guided her toward the house. Henry, would you take Miss Reed's bag to the east wing? The interior was even more stunning than the exterior. Soaring ceilings, original artwork and furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. But what struck Charlotte most was how lived in it felt despite its grandeur. Books scattered on coffee tables, a coffee mug forgotten on a side table, jazz music playing softly from hidden speakers. This is the main living area, Logan explained, leading her through rooms that flowed seamlessly into each other. The kitchen is through here. Maria, my chef, comes in Monday through Friday. You'll coordinate with her for any dinner parties or special events. In the kitchen, Charlotte met Maria Gonzalez, a warm woman in her 50s who immediately put Charlotte at ease. So, You're the one who's finally going to bring some organization to this place, Maria said with a knowing smile. Logan's brilliant with business, but ask him where he put his reading glasses and he's lost. I heard that, Logan called from the doorway, and Charlotte was surprised to see him actually laughing. The sound was rich and genuine, nothing like the cold businessman from her father's description. You were meant to, Maria shot back. Now, Charlotte, let me know what you like to eat. I'll make sure there's always something good in your refrigerator. My refrigerator? Charlotte asked. Your wing has a full kitchen, Logan explained. You're welcome to eat with the staff or cook for yourself, whatever you prefer. This is your home now, Charlotte. I want you to be comfortable. The tour continued to his home office, a masculine space with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a desk that looked like mission control. Then to the formal dining room, the library. Charlotte nearly swooned at the thousands of books. And finally, to the East Wing. This is your domain, Logan said, opening French doors to reveal a space that was larger than Charlotte's entire house back home. The sitting room was decorated in soft blues and creams, with a fireplace and windows overlooking gardens that took her breath away. The bedroom was equally stunning, with a king-sized bed and an ensuite bathroom that looked like something from a luxury hotel. Logan, this is too much, Charlotte said, running her hand over the silk curtains. I'm just a housekeeper. You're not just anything, he said firmly. And you're not exactly a traditional housekeeper either. Think of yourself as my estate manager. This house runs multiple business functions. I entertain clients, host board meetings, conduct video conferences with international partners. You'll be coordinating all of that. Charlotte turned to face him, and for a moment they stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her knees weak. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. The truth this time. Logan was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes studying her face. Because 5 years ago I made a mistake that cost someone their future. Someone young and brilliant and full of potential just like you. I can't fix what I did to her, but maybe I can give you the opportunities she never got. What happened to her? She trusted the wrong man, Logan said simply, and paid the price for his failures. Charlotte felt her heart clench at the pain in his voice. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his arm. I'm sorry. He looked down at her hand on his sleeve, and something shifted in his expression. You should know, he said, his voice rougher than before, that I'm not always easy to work for. I'm demanding. I'm particular about details, and I don't accept excuses. I wouldn't expect anything less, Charlotte said, surprised by her own boldness. I don't want this to be easy, Logan. I want to learn, to grow, to become someone who can handle whatever you throw at me. Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, respect, maybe even attraction. In that case, Miss Reed, I think this arrangement is going to be very interesting indeed. He stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place. But Charlotte had seen what was underneath. The real Logan Blackwell was passionate, driven, and carrying old wounds that ran deep. And despite every rational thought in her head, she found herself wanting to know more. Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join me, he said, moving toward the door. We can discuss your schedule for next week. I'd like that, Charlotte said, and meant it. After he left, Charlotte sank onto the luxurious sofa and looked around her new home. 6 months ago, her biggest worry was whether she'd graduate high school with honors. Now she was living in a mansion, working for one of the most powerful men in the state and feeling things she'd never felt before. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. How is it, sweetheart? Are you safe? Charlotte typed back. It's perfect, Mom. I think I'm going to love it here. And as she hit send, she realized she meant every word. 3 weeks into her new life, Charlotte had discovered that working for Logan Blackwell was like dancing with a hurricane, exhilarating, unpredictable, and absolutely transformative. Charlotte! Logan's voice echoed through the house at 6:30 a.m. Where did you put the Morrison contract? She appeared in his office doorway, perfectly dressed despite the early hour, holding the file he needed. Right where you left it yesterday, under the Beijing reports you were reviewing. Coffee's brewing, and Maria left breakfast in the warming drawer. Your conference call with Tokyo is in 20 minutes. Logan paused in his frantic searching, looking at her with something close to amazement. How do you do that? Do what? Charlotte asked, though she was secretly pleased by his impressed tone. Make everything seem manageable. The truth was, Charlotte had never felt more alive. Every day brought new challenges. Coordinating with Logan's business partners, managing household staff, organizing dinner parties for clients who made decisions worth millions. She'd learned to anticipate Logan's needs before he voiced them, to think 3 steps ahead, to command respect from people twice her age. And Logan noticed. Oh, how he noticed. "There's a board dinner Thursday night," he said, accepting the coffee she offered. Their fingers brushed as he took the mug, and Charlotte felt that familiar electric thrill. 8 executives, very important to the Henderson acquisition. "How formal?" Charlotte asked, pulling out her tablet to take notes. "Black tie." "These men need to feel impressed but comfortable. Maria can handle the menu, but I need you to—" He paused, studying her face. "Actually, I'd like you to attend. As my hostess." Charlotte's heart skipped. "Your hostess? You understand business better than most of my executives," Logan said matter-of-factly. "And you have a way of making people feel at ease. Plus, you're beautiful enough to remind them they're somewhere special, but intelligent enough that they'll actually listen when you speak." Heat flooded Charlotte's cheeks. "Logan, I don't have anything appropriate to wear to." "Problem solved." He pulled out his phone. "Clara, I need you to take someone shopping today. Full evening wardrobe, black tie appropriate. Charge it to my personal account." "Logan, no," Charlotte protested. "That's too much." He ended the call and looked at her seriously. "Charlotte, you're not just my housekeeper anymore. You haven't been since your first week. You're my partner in running this estate, and soon you'll be helping me close deals worth millions. You need to look the part." The word partner made Charlotte's pulse race. "What if I embarrass you? I've never been to anything fancier than a church potluck." Logan stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Impossible. You could never embarrass me, Charlotte. You're extraordinary." The air between them crackled with tension. Charlotte's breath caught as Logan's gaze dropped briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. For a moment she desperately wanted him to. Then his phone rang, shattering the spell. "Blackwell," he answered curtly, stepping away. But Charlotte caught the slight tremor in his voice, the way his free hand clenched at his side. He wasn't as unaffected as he pretended to be. Later that afternoon, Charlotte found herself in the most exclusive boutique she'd ever seen, being fitted for dresses that cost more than her father used to make in a month. Clara, Logan's personal shopper, was a whirlwind of efficiency and style. "Mr. Blackwell has excellent taste," Clara said, adjusting the fit of a stunning midnight blue gown. "He specifically requested something that would bring out your eyes. And he was right. This color is perfect on you." "He said that?" Charlotte asked, staring at her reflection in disbelief. The woman in the mirror looked sophisticated, confident, beautiful in a way Charlotte had never seen herself. "Oh, honey," Clara smiled knowingly. "That man has noticed everything about you. The way he described you. Let's just say I've been shopping for Logan Blackwell for 5 years, and I've never heard him talk about anyone the way he talks about you." That evening, Charlotte knocked on Logan's office door wearing a simple sundress, the shopping bags in her arms. "Come in," he called without looking up from his laptop. "I wanted to thank you," Charlotte began, but stopped when he raised his head. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were intense. "Logan? What's wrong?" He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about your dreams, Charlotte. What did you want to be before all this?" The question caught her off guard. "I wanted to study business, maybe open my own company someday. Something small, probably, but mine." "What kind of company?" Charlotte felt heat rise in her cheeks. "It sounds silly. Nothing you say could sound silly to me." "Event planning. I love organizing things, bringing people together, making occasions special. I used to plan all the church functions back home, and I was good at it." Logan was quiet for a long moment. "Charlotte, do you realize what you've been doing here? You organized a dinner party for 12 last week that helped me close a $15 million deal. You coordinated a charity auction that raised more money than they'd made in the previous 3 years combined. You're not dreaming of running a small company. You're already running a significant operation." Charlotte blinked. I never thought of it that way." "That's because you're still thinking like the girl from Tennessee instead of the woman you've become." Logan stood and walked around his desk, stopping just in front of her. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Charlotte shook her head, not trusting her voice. "I see someone who could run any company she wanted. Someone who could be my equal in business, my partner in everything." His hand came up to cup her cheek gently. I see the most remarkable woman I've ever met. This time, when his gaze dropped to her lips, he didn't pull away. Charlotte's heart hammered as he leaned closer, closer. "Mr. Blackwell," Maria's voice echoed from the hallway. "Your dinner is ready." Logan jerked back as if burned, his hand dropping from Charlotte's face. We should eat." But as they walked to the dining room, Charlotte couldn't stop thinking about the heat in his eyes, the gentleness of his touch, the way he'd called her remarkable. Something was changing between them, something powerful and inevitable. And for the first time, Charlotte wasn't afraid of where it might lead. Over dinner, Logan was back to business mode, discussing Thursday's dinner party and the clients she'd be meeting. But Charlotte caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, and twice their hands brushed, reaching for the same dish, sending sparks through her entire body. After dinner, as Charlotte headed to her wing, Logan called her name softly. "Charlotte?" When she turned, his expression was vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "Thank you for everything you've brought to this house, to my life. Thank you for giving me the chance," she whispered back. That night, Charlotte lay in her luxurious bed staring at the ceiling, her lips still tingling from an almost kiss, her mind racing with possibilities she'd never dared imagine. Down the hall, Logan stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the gardens and thinking about blue eyes and gentle hands, and the woman who was changing everything he thought he knew about himself. Neither of them slept well that night, but for the first time in years, neither of them minded being awake. Thursday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. Charlotte stood before her mirror, barely recognizing the sophisticated woman staring back at her. The midnight blue gown Clara had selected fit like it was made for her, and her hair was swept into an elegant updo that Maria had insisted on helping with. "You look like a princess," Maria said, adding the final touches to Charlotte's makeup. "Logan won't be able to take his eyes off you." "That's what I'm afraid of," Charlotte murmured, her stomach fluttering with nerves. "Why? You've been working beside him for weeks. You know more about his business than some of his executives." But tonight felt different. Tonight Charlotte wouldn't just be Logan's capable assistant. She'd be standing beside him as his equal, his partner, maybe even more. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Charlotte?" Logan's voice was softer than usual. "May I come in?" "Of course." When the door opened and Logan stepped inside, Charlotte's breath caught. He was devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, but it was the expression on his face that made her heart race. Wonder, appreciation, and something deeper that made her knees weak. He started, then stopped, seeming to lose his words. "Charlotte, you're absolutely stunning." "Thank you," she whispered, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Logan moved closer, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. "I have something for you." Charlotte's heart nearly stopped. "Logan, I can't accept." "They're not what you think," he said gently, opening the box to reveal a pair of sapphire earrings that perfectly matched her dress. "They belong to my mother. She would have loved you." The simple statement hit Charlotte like a physical blow. The way he said it, with such certainty and tenderness, made her realize this wasn't just about business anymore. Maybe it never had been. "I can't wear your mother's jewelry," she protested weakly. "She always said jewelry was meant to be worn by someone who would appreciate its beauty," Logan said, his voice rough with emotion. "Someone worthy of it. You're the first woman I've ever wanted to give them to." With trembling fingers, Charlotte allowed him to fasten the earrings. His touch was gentle, reverent, and when he was finished, his hands lingered on her shoulders. "There's something I need to tell you," he said suddenly. "Before tonight, before we go downstairs and you meet these people as my partner." Charlotte turned to face him, concerned by the tension in his voice. "What is it?" Logan ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she'd learned meant he was struggling with something important. "The woman I told you about. The one I failed 5 years ago." "What about her?" "Her name was Rebecca. She was young, brilliant, working as an intern at a company I was acquiring. She had dreams of starting her own business, just like you." His voice grew pained. "I was attracted to her intelligence, her ambition. We began a relationship." Charlotte felt a stab of something that might have been jealousy, but she pushed it aside. "What happened?" "I was ruthless in the acquisition, completely focused on profit, on winning. I didn't realize that my actions would result in massive layoffs. including Rebecca. She lost not just her job, but her reputation in the industry. Other companies wouldn't hire her because they thought she'd given me inside information. Did she? Never. She was completely ethical, which made it worse. I destroyed her career for nothing. Logan's jaw clenched. She tried to start her own company, but without connections or capital. She ended up having to move back home, take a job completely unrelated to her field. Last I heard, she was teaching elementary school in Iowa. Charlotte felt her heart break for both of them. For Rebecca, whose dreams had been crushed, and for Logan, who clearly carried this guilt like a physical weight. "Is that why you hired me?" she asked quietly. "To assuage your guilt?" Logan's hands cupped her face gently. "It started that way," he admitted. "But Charlotte, what I feel for you has nothing to do with Rebecca or guilt or trying to fix the past. You're not her replacement. You're something entirely new, something I never expected and definitely don't deserve." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere between watching you organize your first dinner party and seeing you stand up to my most difficult board members, I fell completely, hopelessly in love with you." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge, a confession, a promise. "Logan," Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper, "I know it's crazy. I know you're young and I'm set in my ways and we come from completely different worlds. I know you probably see me as this older man who helped you out of a bad situation, and maybe that's all I'll ever be to you. But I had to tell you the truth before." Charlotte silenced him the only way she could think of, by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was everything she'd imagined and more. Gentle at first, then deeper, as Logan's arms came around her, pulling her closer. She could taste his surprise, his relief, his overwhelming tenderness. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "For the record," Charlotte said, her voice shaky but determined, "I don't see you as some older man who helped me out. I see you as the person who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, as someone who challenges me to be better every day, as the man I've been falling in love with since that first day in my parents' backyard." Logan's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. "Really? Really?" Charlotte laughed, feeling giddy with relief and joy. "Though I have to say, your timing could use some work. We have 8 executives arriving in 20 minutes. "Let them wait," Logan said, leaning down to kiss her again. "I've waited 35 years to feel this way about someone. A few more minutes won't kill anyone." When they finally made it downstairs, Charlotte felt like she was floating. The executives were indeed important, powerful men who controlled millions of dollars in investments. But with Logan beside her and his love giving her confidence, Charlotte found herself not just keeping up with their conversation, but contributing insights that made them sit up and take notice. "Miss Reed," said David Chen, the lead investor, "your perspective on the Asian markets is fascinating. Have you considered consulting independently?" Charlotte glanced at Logan, who was watching her with obvious pride. "Actually, I've been thinking about starting my own event planning company, something that specializes in corporate functions. With your understanding of business and your obvious organizational skills, you'd be formidable," another executive chimed in. "Logan, you'd be smart to invest in whatever she starts." "I already have," Logan said quietly, his eyes never leaving Charlotte's face. "In every way that matters." Later that night, after the last guest had left and the staff had cleaned up, Logan and Charlotte stood on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The moonlight painted everything silver, and Charlotte had never felt more beautiful, more confident, more loved. "So what happens now?" she asked, settled comfortably in Logan's arms. "Now we figure out how to build a life together," Logan said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Your life, my life, our life, whatever you want it to look like." "I want it all," Charlotte said boldly. "The business, the partnership, the love. I want to be your equal in everything." "You already are," Logan assured her. "You have been from the moment you walked into my world and turned it completely upside down." As they stood together under the stars, Charlotte reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day in her parents' backyard. She'd come here as a frightened girl trying to save her family. She was staying as a confident woman ready to build a future with the man she loved. And the best part, this was just the beginning. 1 year later, Charlotte stood in the marble foyer of the Blackwell Event Center, watching her team of coordinators manage the setup for the mayor's charity gala. The converted east wing of Logan's estate had become the premier event venue in the state, and Charlotte's company, Reed & Associates Event Planning, was booked solid for the next 18 months. "Miss Reed," called James Morrison, one of her junior coordinators, "the ice sculptures just arrived, but the florist is running 30 minutes late." "No problem," Charlotte replied smoothly, checking her tablet. "Call Sunshine Gardens. They're our backup for this exact situation. They can be here in 20 minutes with something even better." As James hurried away, Charlotte marveled at how natural leadership felt now. The nervous girl from Tennessee seemed like someone from another lifetime. "Watching you work never gets old," Logan's familiar voice said behind her. Charlotte turned, her heart still skipping a beat at the sight of him even after all these months together. He was devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, but it was the way he looked at her, with absolute adoration and respect, that made her feel beautiful. "Enjoying the view, Mr. Blackwell?" she teased, straightening his already perfect bow tie. "Always, future Mrs. Blackwell," he murmured, capturing her hands and bringing them to his lips. The engagement ring on her finger caught the light, a stunning sapphire surrounded by diamonds that had belonged to Logan's grandmother. He'd proposed 3 months ago during a business trip to Paris, getting down on one knee in front of the Eiffel Tower like the romantic he'd turned out to be. "How are the final preparations going?" Logan asked, though his eyes never left her face. "Perfect, as always." "Your mother would be proud," Charlotte said, adjusting a white rose in his boutonniere. 500 guests, $50,000 raised so far, and that's before the auction even starts. Speaking of the auction, Logan grinned mysteriously. "I have a surprise for you." Before Charlotte could ask what he meant, Maria appeared with their old friend Henry in tow, both beaming with excitement. "Charlotte, darling," Maria embraced her warmly. "Look who flew in from Iowa this morning." Charlotte turned and gasped. A young woman with kind eyes and a warm smile was walking toward them, holding the hand of a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5. "Rebecca?" Charlotte whispered. Rebecca Matthews smiled, looking healthy and happy in a way that made Charlotte's heart soar. "Hi, Charlotte. Logan's told me so much about you. I've been following your company's success. It's incredible what you've built. What are you doing here?" Charlotte stammered, looking between Rebecca and Logan. "I invited her," Logan said simply. "Rebecca, would you like to tell Charlotte your news?" Rebecca's smile grew wider. "I'm opening my own consulting firm in Chicago. Corporate restructuring and ethical business practices. And Logan is my first investor." Charlotte felt tears spring to her eyes. "Logan, you didn't—" "Actually, it was your idea," Logan said, pulling her close. "Remember that night you told me everyone deserves a second chance? That sometimes helping others is how we heal ourselves? You were right, as usual. But there's more," Rebecca added, her voice excited. "Charlotte, I'd love to partner with your event planning company. Corporate retreats, business conferences, product launches. I think we could create something amazing together." Charlotte looked around at all the faces watching her. Logan's proud and loving expression, Rebecca's hopeful smile, Maria and Henry beaming like proud parents, her own team working seamlessly in the background. This was her life now. These were her people, her choices, her dreams made reality. "I would love that," Charlotte said, meaning every word. The gala that night was a resounding success. Charlotte moved through the crowd with confidence, greeting senators and CEOs as equals, coordinating seamlessly with her staff, and making everything look effortless. But her favorite moment came during the auction, when Logan stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying easily through the ballroom. "Tonight we're raising money for literacy programs in rural schools. It's a cause close to my heart, because I know firsthand how education can transform lives." His eyes found Charlotte in the crowd, and his smile was radiant. "A year and a half ago, I made what I thought was a simple business arrangement. I hired a young woman to manage my household. What I didn't expect was that she would manage to steal my heart and transform my entire world." Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the crowd as Logan continued. "Charlotte Reed came into my life when I thought I knew everything about business, about success, about what mattered. She taught me that true success isn't measured in profit margins. It's measured in the lives you touch, the people you lift up, the love you share." Charlotte felt tears streaming down her cheeks as Logan stepped down from the podium and walked toward her. She took a broken man who thought he was beyond redemption and showed him that it's never too late to become the person you're meant to be. She turned a house into a home, a business arrangement into a love story, and a lonely millionaire into the luckiest man alive. He dropped to one knee in front of 500 guests, pulling out a second ring box. "Charlotte Reed, you've already agreed to be my wife. But tonight, in front of everyone who matters to us, I want to ask you again, will you be my partner in everything? In business? In love? In making the world a little better than we found it?" "Yes," Charlotte whispered. Then louder, "Yes, always, yes." The ballroom erupted in applause as Logan slipped a wedding band onto her finger alongside her engagement ring. As he stood and swept her into his arms for a kiss that made her forget they had an audience, Charlotte thought about how far they'd both come. She thought about the scared girl who'd agreed to work for a stranger to save her family's farm. She thought about the lonely man who'd been carrying guilt like a stone in his chest, and she marveled at what they'd built together. Not just successful businesses, but a partnership based on respect, trust, and a love that made them both stronger. Later that night, as they stood on their terrace looking out at the gardens where their love had bloomed, Logan pulled Charlotte close. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. Charlotte thought about it seriously. "Only one." Logan tensed. "What's that?" "I wish I could go back and tell that terrified 19-year-old girl in Tennessee that the scariest decision of her life was going to turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to her." Logan's laugh was rich and joyful. "I love you, Charlotte Blackwell." "I love you too, Logan." "Partners?" "Partners," he confirmed, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted like forever. As the moon rose over Blackwell Manor, their home, their sanctuary, their beginning, Charlotte knew that some arrangements really were too good to be true. They were better than true. They were perfect. The end.
A waitress spotted what doctors missed and saved a billionaire's son's life in minutes. What if a simple act of paying attention could change everything? In a bustling diner on the corner of 5th and Main, where the coffee never stops brewing and the conversations flow like honey, nobody expected that Tuesday evening to be different from any other. The rain drummed against the windows while families gathered around worn vinyl booths, sharing stories over steaming plates of comfort food. Behind the counter, a woman with kind eyes and calloused hands from years of service moved with the practiced grace of someone who truly cared about every person who walked through those doors. She had learned to read people the way others read books, catching the subtle signs that spoke volumes about their hearts, their struggles, their needs. On this particular evening, as the dinner rush began to settle into a gentle hum, her gift for noticing what others missed would prove to be more precious than gold. "Where are you watching from tonight?" Linda had been serving tables at Joe's family diner for nearly 15 years, and in that time, she had become something of a neighborhood guardian angel. Her customers weren't just orders on a ticket. They were Mrs. Peterson, who always asked for extra cream with her coffee after her husband passed, and young Danny, whose mother worked late shifts and trusted Linda to make sure he finished his homework before dessert. The diner was more than a restaurant. It was a sanctuary where people came not just for food, but for the warmth of being truly seen and cared for. That Tuesday evening started like any other. The familiar sounds of sizzling bacon and gentle conversation filled the air, while the aroma of fresh-baked apple pie created an atmosphere of home. Linda moved between tables with her usual attentiveness, refilling coffee cups and sharing genuine smiles that had the power to brighten even the darkest days. Around 7:30, the bell above the door chimed, and in walked a man she had never seen before. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month, yet there was something weary about his posture. His dark hair was perfectly styled, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who had forgotten how to rest. Behind him, almost hidden in his shadow, was a boy of about 10 years old. The child moved slowly, as if each step required great effort. His pale complexion seemed almost translucent under the diner's warm lighting, and Linda noticed how he kept one hand pressed against his side. The man, clearly his father, guided him to a corner booth with the protective care of someone who had learned to anticipate trouble. As Linda approached their table with menus and her warmest smile, she heard the man speaking in hushed, worried tones on his phone. "The appointment isn't until Thursday," he was saying, frustration creeping into his voice. "Are you absolutely certain there's nothing available sooner?" When he hung up, She could see the concern etched deep in his features. "Welcome to Joe's," Linda said gently, setting down glasses of ice water. "What can I get you folks started with tonight?" But even as she spoke, her experienced eyes were taking in details that would soon prove to be life-changing. The boy, who introduced himself quietly as Alex, attempted a brave smile as he studied the menu, but Linda's trained eye caught what others might have missed. His breathing seemed labored, and every few minutes, he would shift uncomfortably in his seat. When his father, Robert, stepped outside to take another urgent phone call, Alex's facade began to crumble. "Everything looks so good," Alex whispered, though Linda noticed he was only pretending to read the menu. His small fingers trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass. "Are you feeling all right, sweetheart?" Linda asked, sliding into the booth across from him with the gentle authority of someone who had raised 3 children of her own. "You look a little pale." Alex glanced toward the window where his father paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear. "Dad says the doctors are just being extra careful," he said, but his voice carried the uncertainty of a child trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. "My stomach hurts sometimes, but it's probably nothing serious." Linda's motherly instincts, honed by years of caring for others, began sending quiet alarms through her mind. She had seen this particular combination of symptoms before. The way Alex held his right side, the slight yellow tinge around his eyes, the way he seemed to be fighting nausea with each breath. When Robert returned to the table, Linda noticed the deep lines of worry that expensive suits and successful businesses couldn't hide. "The specialists are all booked solid," he explained to Alex, forcing optimism into his voice. "But we'll see Dr. Morrison on Thursday, and he's the best in the city." As Linda took their order, simple chicken soup for Alex, who claimed he wasn't very hungry, and a coffee for Robert, she found herself studying the child more closely. Her grandmother had always said that sometimes the most important thing you could do was trust your gut, and right now, every instinct Linda possessed was telling her that Thursday might be too late. During a quiet moment between tables, she approached Robert with the careful diplomacy of someone who understood the delicate balance between helping and overstepping. "I don't mean to intrude," she began softly, "but I've raised 3 kids of my own, and I've seen a lot of worried parents over the years. If this moment is touching your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. Sometimes, when you love someone that much, you know when something isn't right, don't you?" Robert looked up from his barely touched coffee, and Linda could see the weight of fear he'd been carrying alone. "The doctors say it's probably just a stomach bug," he said, but his voice betrayed his doubts. "Alex has been dealing with this on and off for weeks, but it's gotten worse since yesterday." Linda's heart ached for this father who was clearly fighting his own instincts in favor of medical protocol. She had been in his shoes, remembering sleepless nights when her youngest son ran fever, and she knew, just knew, that something needed immediate attention. "May I ask what exactly the doctors have said?" As Robert explained the various theories and scheduled tests, Linda watched Alex, who had now stopped even pretending to eat his soup. The child was holding his side more frequently, and she noticed a subtle but unmistakable sign that made her pulse quicken: the way he was instinctively drawing his right leg up, as if trying to protect that area from any movement or pressure. Her late husband had been a paramedic for 25 years, and Linda had absorbed more medical knowledge than most people realized during their long conversations about his calls. What she was seeing in Alex triggered memories of her husband's urgent voice describing a particular emergency. When kids start guarding their lower right side like that, Linda, especially with the nausea and that pale complexion, you don't wait for appointments. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't just a stomach ache. "Robert," she said, sitting down at their table with gentle urgency, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm not a doctor, but I've seen enough to know that some things can't wait for Thursday." Her voice was steady, but her hands were trembling with the weight of what she was about to say. "I think Alex might have appendicitis, and if I'm right, waiting could be dangerous." Robert's face went white. "But the doctors said." "The doctors haven't seen him in person since this got worse," Linda interrupted kindly but firmly. "And sometimes, the people who love us most are the ones who notice what medical appointments and test results miss." She reached across the table and gently touched Robert's hand. Have you ever faced something like this, where every instinct told you to act? Let us know in the comments. Alex whimpered softly, doubling over slightly as another wave of pain hit him. Linda's eyes met Robert's, and in that moment, she saw a father's love override every protocol and procedure he'd been following. What do you think I should do? Robert asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but Linda could hear the shift. He was finally ready to trust what his heart had been telling him all along. I think you should take Alex to the emergency room right now, Linda said firmly but gently. Don't wait for tests or appointments. Tell them you suspect appendicitis and that his symptoms have gotten significantly worse. As if the universe was confirming her instincts, Alex suddenly cried out, his small body doubling over in genuine agony. The pain that crossed his face was unmistakable. This was no longer something that could be managed with soup and waiting. Robert sprang into action with the decisiveness that had probably made him successful in business. You're right, he said, scooping Alex up carefully. Thank you for trusting your instincts when I was too scared to trust mine. Linda quickly grabbed her jacket and keys. I'm coming with you, she announced, in a tone that brooked no argument. My car's closer, and I know the fastest route to General Hospital. During the tense drive through the evening traffic, Linda held Alex's hand while Robert called ahead to the emergency room, using the authority in his voice and probably his family name to ensure they would be ready. Alex, despite his pain, managed to squeeze Linda's fingers, and she found herself humming the same lullaby she had once sung to calm her own children's fears. Why are you helping us? Alex asked weakly, his young eyes filled with a wisdom that comes from facing something frightening. Because sometimes, sweetie, strangers are just friends we haven't had the chance to know yet, Linda replied, smoothing his hair with maternal tenderness. And because your daddy loves you so much, he was brave enough to listen when someone else saw what he was feeling in his heart. At the hospital, the emergency room team took one look at Alex and immediately whisked him away for evaluation. Within an hour, the diagnosis was confirmed, acute appendicitis that would have likely become life-threatening within the next 12 hours. As Robert sat in the surgical waiting room, Linda beside him offering the quiet support that only another parent could provide, he turned to her with tears in his eyes. How did you know? The doctors missed it completely. Sometimes, Linda said softly, caring for people teaches you to see beyond the surface. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Love has a way of making us notice what really matters. 3 hours later, the surgeon emerged with news that confirmed Linda's life-saving instincts. Alex's appendix had been on the verge of rupturing, and the emergency surgery had been performed just in time. As Robert collapsed with relief, Linda quietly stepped aside to let father and son have their moment when Alex was wheeled back to his room, sleepy but safe. The next morning, Linda arrived at the hospital with a thermos of Joe's famous chicken soup and a small teddy bear she had picked up from the gift shop. She found Alex sitting up in bed, color returned to his cheeks, chattering excitedly about the really cool scar he was going to have. Linda, he called out when he saw her, his face lighting up with the pure joy that only children can express so completely. Dad says you saved my life. Robert stood up from the bedside chair, and Linda was surprised to see that this powerful, successful man was fighting back tears. I don't know how to thank you, he said simply. If you hadn't spoken up, if you hadn't trusted what you were seeing. He couldn't finish the sentence. You don't need to thank me, Linda replied, settling into the chair beside Alex's bed. You just need to remember that sometimes the most important medicine isn't in a prescription bottle. It's in paying attention to the people we love. Over the following weeks, as Alex recovered completely, an unexpected friendship blossomed. Robert would bring Alex to the diner every Sunday for breakfast, where Linda would save their favorite corner booth and always have extra whipped cream ready for Alex's pancakes. The wealthy businessman and the small-town waitress discovered they shared something more valuable than money could buy. The understanding that true wealth comes from the connections we make and the care we show for one another. Robert eventually established a scholarship fund in Linda's name at the local nursing school, but he always insisted that no amount of money could truly repay someone for the gift of listening to their heart when it mattered most. Linda, for her part, continued doing exactly what she had always done, serving others with attention, kindness, and the wisdom that comes from understanding that every person who walks through the door carries a story worth noticing. As Alex often told anyone who would listen, sometimes the most important doctor isn't the one with the diploma on the wall. Sometimes it's the person who cares enough to really see you when you need it most. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of hope, intuition, and the beautiful connections that remind us what truly matters in life.